Hello there, this is El Presidente Tel. Just looking at an article that I've been meaning to comment on for a while now that was published in The Guardian in the UK. It was on Tuesday, entitled Anti-Abortion Group Drafted in as Sexual Health Advisor to the Government. Now, what this story pertains to in a very brief summary is that under the new Conservative Lib Dem government, they've abolished the independent advisory group on sexual health and HIV, and they're creating their new sexual health forum. And many organisations that were in the original group have been invited in, but one of the new ones that's been invited in is the organisation called Life, who oppose abortion in all circumstances and favour abstinence-based approaches to sex education. Now, before anyone thinks this is going to be a complete religious bashing segment, let me just state that Life as an organisation considers itself non-denominational. They merely favour that people are taught abstinence instead, and they say that they're welcome, they're glad to get into the group because they want to share their views because they've not been given this opportunity before. But the bit that concerns me is that it was actually given at the expense of sort of removing the British Pregnancy Advisory Service from the forum, because the government was not willing to give the British Pregnancy Advisory Service and Mary Stopes International, a group that deals with terminations of pregnancies, the same seat. They were having to combine a seat, and BPAS was not willing to share the seat, so they had to go. I mean, they had a 40-year track record in providing counselling, and they've been well established on forums in the past, so no one can really understand why the government wasn't willing to cut them a deal and agree with them. I mean, and this is not saying that instantly we're going to have an abstinence-based approach in this country either, because some of the other people on the group are organisations like the Terence Higgins Trust, the big HIV charity, Brooke, which is another sexual health charity, which is going to be interesting because Life have actually been opposed to Brooke in the past, and their leaflets on contraception, Life said that Brooke didn't tell the world that condoms can only reduce certain sexually transmitted infection risk and is no protection against others. Now, that's their claim. Whether it's true or not, I haven't verified. But Brooke said their literature is based on the clinical evidence, and they're saying that you really can't base sex education purely on abstinence, which I would say is quite fair, because you'd be a fool to think that abstinence wasn't one of the most effective ways of avoiding sexually transmitted infection. Any doctor will tell you that the best way to avoid a sexually transmitted infection is to not have sex. But the point is, we live in the real world, and in the real world people do enjoy sexual intercourse, and so the reason that we have these other programs in is to say, sex is fine, moral judgments aside, sex is fine, but please use protection. You'll avoid pregnancy and you'll avoid a lot of the infections. But this is part of a larger sort of initiative, really, by the government, which is slowly allowing faith-based organisations to creep in under the David Cameron big society idea, where the government is withdrawing its funding of certain areas and expecting volunteers to come in. The faith-based organisations are perfectly placed to come into that remit. For example, on the new Sex and Relationships Council from the Educational Secretary, Michael Gove, we have the Silver Ring thing, the pro-abstinence group run by Christians who aim to give value-based, parent-centred sex education. Silver ring thing, obviously, I think everyone knows it by now. You get a little silver ring that promises that you will not have sex until you're married. And another part of the creeping in of the religious is that with Richmond Council in southwest London, the Catholic Children's Society has recently won the £89,000 contract to give contraception and pregnancy advice to school children in the area. And Care Confidential is involved in crisis pregnancy under the auspices of Newham. And that one in Richmond concerns me because the Catholic standard Catholic doctrine on contraception is that it should not be used in any circumstance. So how can you really give fair and balanced advice on contraception when your very founding principles and religious teachings forbid it? But in summary, whilst this isn't a massive threat to democracy and it's not a invasion of privacy by the religious forces, I think it is cause for concern, because it would be a shame that children's sexual health and the future of this country is put at risk when we allow dogma to replace reason with regards to helping develop the youth so that they can be the leaders of tomorrow. This is El Presidente, wishing you all love, peace and liberty.